Ceann Comhairle, I want to raise the issue again with the Taoiseach, and it's the issue of protests against the installation of water meters, which are taking place in big estates across the city and country. And I want to state that, contrary to what the Taoiseach said when I raised this issue last week, that these protests are being organised by outsiders, that is not the case. It is not, as he said, the so-called usual suspects, but they're taking place spontaneously with local residents, with children demonstrating their objections to the water charges. I want to raise the question of the right to engage in peaceful protest, as guaranteed under the Article 40 of the Constitution, and that is the right to assemble without arms. These protests have been taking place peacefully until someone somewhere decided to change that decision. We now have a position whereby peaceful protests are being forcibly broken up by large numbers of Gardaí. People have been manhandled, pushed, pulled and shoved, and in some cases in a very aggressive manner. There have been numerous arrests. I want to give you an example of a very small estate, 27 houses off Clanbrassil Street in my constituency. Only 27 houses, but 19 Gardaí were brought in there to protect the Irish, so-called protect the Irish water workers. One resident was taken to hospital yesterday with an ankle injury, and in Clare Hall, 26 Gardaí were involved, taken from stations across Dublin. And there was a switch today to St Donoghue's and Donaghmede, where over 100 residents have come out in protest, and there's a large Garda presence again, and there's been 2 arrests. Is this not a strange use of limited Garda resources? And does it not raise a question of political policing? Is it right that the police force are mobilised to break what is popular resistance to an unjust tax? These protests are going to spread, Taoiseach. It's not sustainable for the Gardaí to have such numbers policing these protests, which last all day. Any idea that these peaceful protests can be crushed by the use of large numbers of Gardaí is fanciful. And I'll finish up on this point, Ceann Comhairle. I can also assure you, Taoiseach, that you will see the real extent of the opposition to these water charges and the anger about them coming on top of the property tax. You'll see this on Saturday, when tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, will demonstrate in favour of the right to water. And would it not be better now, Taoiseach, to accept the reality and scrap the water charges? A motion condemning the heavy-handed tactics in trying to suppress these protests was passed this week in Dublin City Council. The Mayor and Dublin City Council has indicated he wants to meet the Garda Commissioner, and he's unhappy with the actions of a small number of Gardaí. Would you consider, Taoiseach, intervening to defend the right to peaceful protest?
Well, first of all, in your long prepared statement there, I have to say that I've received a lot of complaints from people who find themselves intimidated by some of the people taking over their estates and actually deciding what their attitude should be in relation to Irish water. I understand that there's a range of views in this country in relation to Irish water. A lot of people, this may come as news to you, want to see the very bad situation that has existed in relation to investment in our water changed and turned around. We have problems ranging from people in the country who are on boil water notices because the water infrastructure is totally deficient. We have lead pipes in significant parts of our urban areas, which for the sake of older people and for the sake of children ought to be removed by a vigorous and expansive investment programme. And we also have, particularly in the Greater Dublin region, which is attracting a huge amount of construction and investment in jobs. We need water, and we need high-quality water to continue to attract those jobs and investment, and then to do it not just in Dublin, but right around the country. Now, there, if you like, the arguments in favour of why we as a country should have in the past spent a huge investment on our water infrastructure. We should have spent a huge investment on our water infrastructure. There was a lot of money spent, just bear with me, Deputy Callagher, there was a lot of money spent, but it was spent by 34 separate local authorities in what I'm sure even the Fianna Fáil people who were in government at the time, they meant well. I'm not saying anything that you didn't mean it well. But What happened was that was disjointed. That was completely disjointed. And the consequence is now, if we want to progress as a country, we have to have safer water for our own people, for our children and for our older people, from a health point of view. And secondly, we want to actually have water treated properly and with due regards to people's health, and also with due regard to the need for investment into jobs and employment. What I would also say about these protesters is that the matter has been before the courts, and I am not going to comment on how the courts will deal with issues as they arise. Obviously, they're independent of here. But what I will say in relation to the Gardaí is that I have seen them in a number of situations where they have acted with extraordinary patience, firmness and courtesy to people who have been giving them, I would say, an extremely difficult and hard time. I think that they have actually responded with complete professionalism. Now, there are issues that are before the courts. I don't want to comment on those. But there are about 1,000 men, Deputy, who have jobs working in Irish Water and for Irish Water. And like with the bin, like with your campaign many decades ago on refuse, what you want to do is deprive and close down existing jobs, and then we don't know where we will be with the alternative that you're proposing.
Deputy Collins, 1 minute, thank you.
You didn't answer the question again, Taoiseach, which is a habit of the government benches. We know what you said. That's been repeated a number of times in the Dáil this week. Can I raise with you the fact that people are coming out of their houses? It's extraordinary. I've never seen a spontaneous reaction like it in my life. For 15 days in Crumlin, Irish Water came in the morning. The residents came out of their homes, stood over the shore, and those men sat in their vans all day and got paid. And they moved out of Crumlin 15 days afterwards with that one water meter going into it. And the same in Drimna for 5 days. Now, these men are getting paid whether they actually put a water meter in or not. So using that argument is absolutely false, and trying to throw the issue another way and raise dust in people's eyes. The fact of the matter is there's peaceful protesting in the communities. Ordinary people, women with children, men who are absolutely opposed to this water installation. So will you not agree, Taoiseach, that people have a right to say no and move on to the next one if the other person wants to have that water meter? They have the right to say no, and will you not condemn the tactics by a small number of Gardaí who are stepping out of control and creating chaos in the communities?
Well, all of the protesters that I have seen before seem to have extremely expensive phones, tablets, video cameras and other... Sorry, I say this seriously. Sorry, a core part of the campaign is to video every single second. Sorry,
would you please allow an answer? You may not like what she's saying, but allow her to speak.
There has been the most extensive filming in relation to any of these actions that I have ever seen anywhere. Hollywood would be in the halfpenny place compared to what's done here. Right? Now, just let me say this. You are making allegations here against Gardaí. You're making allegations against Gardaí. All I can say is that all the material, as you would know, from the protests, particularly anything which looks controversial, is immediately posted up on Facebook, YouTube and everything else. I certainly have a look at that from time to time, and all I can say is that if you can show, with all of the filming that's going on, if you can actually say, as you're suggesting here, that the Gardaí are behaving improperly. I don't think all the extensive filming which has been going on shows that. Now, there is absolutely, certainly, on all the films, quite a lot of confrontation. But as I said, the matters, Deputy, and you don't appear to accept this, some of these matters have been before the courts, and in that case the Gardaí may have a duty in the context of court orders. I'm not going to comment on that because the courts have their job to do. But just let me say this. I think that nowadays you pay your bin charges to a privatised refuse company. And it was the tactics of you and your colleagues and people like you who destroyed the public refuse service.
City Council.
Listen, as a minister, I think you should show greater restraint and respect for your leader.